we'll see what happens. We are going to get to the plane ride from hell, Dark Side of the Ring. And it was dark indeed, John. I didn't think this one would be that dark, but then we watched it and we're like, oh, shit. That was pretty dark. Ric Flair. So they have the flight attendant, and she was on the flight. The plane ride from hell was a European tour that the WWE was on in the late 90s. Or early 2000s, right?
2001 or 2?
There you go.
I think 2002.
Yeah. And, things got out of hand. It was a charter flight. It was their WWE plane, you know. It was all WWE guys on the thing, and there was a lot of drinks, a lot of drinking, a lot of pills, and a lot of terrible behavior from a lot of professional wrestlers. And this one flight attendant that was interviewed for the documentary here on the Dark Side of the Ring told quite a tale. And there were settlements as well. There were cash settlements from the WWE after this because they had to pay some people off to make this go away. Because some bad things happened, including the Nature Boy Ric Flair parading around in his Ric Flair robe with nothing on underneath and cornering this stewardess and cornering her in the plane, putting her hand on his penis, which is a sexual assault, if you're unaware. It's also, I think, forcible confinement. It's a few bad things. It's several charges. It's overall bad behavior. It's overall something that you should not be doing. And I think it's probably enough to get the Nature Boy Ric Flair canceled at this point. Although, what's taken this long? I mean, who doesn't know about this? This has been like a matter of public record for a long time that Ric Flair, you know, was involved in this, and WWE had to pay some people off to, you know, make this thing go away in a civil lawsuit. This happened. We know about this. But how is this taking so long for people to figure this out? How many stories have you heard about the Nature Boy Ric Flair walking around naked? We have heard stories throughout the years of the Nature Boy Ric Flair, you know, showing his dick and just walking around in public places naked. And the wrestlers all just kind of laughing about it, you know. You haven't heard about him sexually assaulting people, though. That's a different story altogether. And that's where it got real dark on the Dark Side of the Ring. You go, oh, shit. I thought Ric Flair would just kind of get naked for the boys, you know, pop the boys, make them laugh, kind of swing his dick around, and then, you know, put his pants back on and continue his night, you know, like... But apparently he was also forcing women to touch his dick when he was nude. And you got to imagine that this woman's story cannot be the only story out there about Ric Flair doing this type of thing. I hope this is the only story, and I hope this is as bad as it gets, but I doubt it strongly. Tommy Dreamer on this documentary excusing the behavior. He's been suspended from Impact Wrestling. The documentary aired last night, and already Impact Wrestling is like, all right, we got to get rid of Tommy Dreamer. He fucking said some terrible things. Like, boys will be boys, you know, type of shit. I mean, it's horrible. Scott Hall grabbing the woman. He grabbed the flight attendant and tried to lick her face and said some derogatory things to her, and then just kind of passed out because he was all fucked up. But he says he was drugged, which if he was drugged, I mean, the guy took a lot of things, and he was fired after the plane ride. A lot of people were fired. Kurt Hennig was fired. This is the same plane ride where Kurt Hennig and Brock Lesnar got into a tussle, a wrestling match, and they were smashing up the plane. All sorts of things got smashed. They got near the door of the plane. People got scared that they were going to burst out of the plane. And I mean, they could have just ran through the wall and fallen out of the sky, right? It was a crazy, crazy plane ride, and some terrible things happened. And we'd heard stories throughout the years about the plane ride from hell. I mean, people have done podcasts about it. People have talked about it in their books. People have talked about it in shoot interviews. We've heard about the plane ride from hell forever. But to have it laid out like this and to hear the story of the flight attendant, that really changes the whole thing. It's not just, a bunch of guys got drunk and they pulled pranks on each other and Brock Lesnar and Kurt Hennig almost flew out of the airplane, but they didn't, so it was all right. Also, Brock Lesnar just exposed himself to Terry Reynolds for no apparent reason, and Terry was supposed to apparently no-sell it and just not say anything about it, which is also fucked up. It's pretty fucked up. A lot of things were fucked up. I mean, Rob Van Dam saying, it wasn't uncommon for guys to drug other wrestlers or to even drug some of the local girls in whatever town so they could have their way with them. Wasn't uncommon for that to happen. Rob Van Dam also saying that he saw Ric Flair corner that flight attendant during the flight and did nothing about it. I thought Rob Van Dam was supposed to be this martial artist, tough guy, badass type of guy. How come you don't step up, RVD, and do some shit about that? When you know of another wrestler who's drugging and raping women, what the fuck are you doing about that? You just letting it happen? Are you participating? What's going on here, RVD? I was really disappointed that RVD said what he said. Admitted to what he admitted to. And, I was really disappointed in that man. I thought he was more of a stand-up guy. I thought he was a little bit more honorable than that. Really disappointed. You don't do that to women. That's fucking horrible. You don't drug women so you could fucking rape them. That's what Bill Cosby went to prison for, RVD. That's not just something that you can allow in your midst. Men should not be allowing that shit to be around them. That is fucking horrible behavior. We all know women. We all love women. They're all women in our lives that we love and care for. Imagine if that was your mother or your sister or your wife or your daughter, RVD. You got to stand up. You got to be a man sometimes. And I don't give a shit if it's the Nature Boy Ric Flair. You beat the fuck out of him. Or at least you tell him to step the fuck back from this scared lady. And you tell your fucking buddies in the locker room, hey, brother, I don't think you should be drugging women. I don't think you should be drugging and raping unsuspecting women. I think that's very uncool. And if I hear of you doing that shit, I'm going to kick you right in the face. That's what I would do. If I hear about any of that shit around me, there's going to be a serious problem. I don't understand that type of behavior. John, you're a professional wrestler. And I don't want to lump this on you like, hey, John, what do you see in the locker room? And shouldn't you be doing something about it? That's not what this is about. But I'm just saying, you can speak to this a little bit better than I can because I'm not involved in professional wrestling in the way that you are. I'm not a professional wrestler. I'm not in the locker rooms. I don't know these guys like you know these guys. I can't say I'm surprised that there's some despicable behavior in professional wrestling, but sometimes you hear some of this stuff, and it really is shocking. Because you don't realize, fuck, man. These are some serious crimes we're talking about. I mean, this is not happening, right? I mean, is this happening? Or you haven't heard of this type of shit going on in wrestling circles, or have you? How common is this?
No, I haven't heard anything like this happening. It's just you hear stories about how it happened back then, right? Because this was 2002. And you hear all the crazy stories about the 80s, how much drugs were used back then. You hear stories like that. But that's all it is now, stories like that. You don't see any abuse like that in locker rooms these days. I don't see it.
Well, good. You know? It's not something we need to see.
No, not at all.
And I would assume that you'd be calling that stuff out if you saw it today, right? I don't think it's something that still is happening today, but who knows, man? Who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's some elements of that still happening today, right? A lot of wrestlers with that whole what did they call that movement? It wasn't Me Too. It was something in wrestling, right? They had like a wrestling term for it. What was that called? That movement, the wrestling.
It was last
Me
year,
Too?
if not mistaken.
Yeah, what did they call it? There was like a hashtag.
I don't remember the hashtag, sadly.
No, me neither. But yeah, I mean, there were current wrestlers, named and doing some pretty horrible shit too, right? It's a problem, man. It's a problem in society. It's not just professional wrestling, but, when you hear that shit about Ric Flair, you hear that shit about Scott Hall, you hear Tommy Dreamer kind of defending it, you hear Rob Van Dam talking about how commonplace it was and how he did fuck all about it. It's pretty horrifying.
Well, what about your take on JR? Like what JR said about everything?
What's JR supposed to say? He was in trouble. He was in charge. He takes responsibility. Guys were fired afterwards. What's JR supposed to do? Vince is supposedly on that plane. Like, Vince doesn't... I mean, if you would think Vince could fucking walk back and be like, God damn it! Shut the fuck up! And things would be maybe settled down a little bit. What the fuck are you doing, Flair? You know what I mean? Like, Vince can't step up and say something to somebody. I don't know how much Jim Ross is to blame for the actions of grown men. Should Ric Flair have been fired after that? Absolutely. They knew what he did. They settled the lawsuit. They knew what he did. And they did fucking nothing about it. Flair should have been fired, and JR saying, well, I guess he was a made man by God. I mean, yeah, okay. Firing guys, you still got to get the okay from the old man. You still got to get that okay from Vinnie Mac. So I'm not going to fucking put the blame on Jim Ross. It's not Jim Ross's fault these grown men acted this way. Jim Ross took action. He fired some guys afterwards. Didn't fire Ric Flair. But, Vince could have done that. Vince is in charge. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it is Vince McMahon's company. The buck stops with Vince. To blame Jim Ross, I think, is unfair. But, of course, people are going to blame Jim Ross because he was on the documentary. If Vince was on the documentary, you goddamn better believe people would be blaming Vince because Vince never comes off well when he's defending himself. Fuck you! I'll have another plane ride from hell. I'll call it the Crown Jewel. I'll get our guys fucking kidnapped by the Saudi government with no alcohol. And they'll be doing shit fucking nothing on the plane. And no women will get molested there because there'll be no women because they don't allow that shit in Saudi Arabia.
Well, something they didn't bring up, I think, at all, really, was the fact that you had Stone Cold Steve Austin there. Triple H was on the flight. The Undertaker was on the flight. What did they do?
I don't know. They didn't say on the documentary.
Well,
hell, son, drank a few beers, ate a few Halcyon, smacked Deborah around. Hell yeah! I mean, you want to fucking go into Stone Cold Steve Austin's past, Dark Side of the Ring? Go into fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin. Ask Deborah how that fucking went. How the marriage ended with Steve. All these guys, man, fucking horrible. Like, so many of these guys. That's why, you just hope that The Rock is okay. You hope, oh, God, I hope Rock never did anything so horrible. Because, he's the one, great superstar wrestling legend where you can kind of say, he's all right? Dwayne's cool. Dwayne's never done anything bad. Dwayne's never killed anybody or raped anybody that we know of, right? Come on. Dwayne doesn't say racist things. How could he? He's Dwayne. He's like all the races put in one in a beautiful package of muscle and awesomeness. You know? Not The Rock, right? Hogan, racist. Flair, sexual assaulter at the very least. Austin, wife beater. You know, fucking all the heroes that you grew up with. Bret Hart, fantastic. I mean, you know, cheat on his wife a bit here and there, but fucking when you go to a grand scheme of wrestlers, he's all right. Bret Hart's still a hero. You know? You can always kind of hang your hat on Bret Hart. The other fucking guys in wrestling, yeah. Undertaker's got some questionable views. You know, I don't know. Stone Cold, you know, that shit with Deborah, really horrible. You ever see Deborah do the shoot interview where she's talking about Stone Cold and how he beat her and why he beat her? He beat her up because she wouldn't perform a sexual act upon him, so he beat her. I mean, that's fucking dark. This is Steve Austin, celebrated professional wrestler. I mean, it just is what it is. So when I watch The Dark Side of the Ring, I'm like, yeah, Flair, man. Seems like a real piece of shit. Not surprised. The guy drinks like a motherfucker and he fucking swings his dick around. Not surprised he's doing terrible shit. Scott Hall, I mean, you know. The attitude about it, though, from the other guys is what I think is most shocking somehow. It's not that Flair did that shit. It's not that Scott Hall did that shit because you're kind of like, yeah. Dustin Rhodes singing to Marlena because he's all drunk. Like, I mean, it's uncomfortable. It's not cool, you know, but Brock Lesnar showing his dick to fucking Terry Runnels is pretty nuts. That's kind of horrible. And it seems like a lot of that shit goes on, and the women are told to not say anything about it. I mean, that's really fucked up. The attitude about it is what really I think is the most shocking. The attitude from the male wrestlers about that type of thing going on. It's like RVD's like, yeah, I saw Flair corner that flight attendant. And you don't stand up and go, hey, old man, step away from that woman. She's obviously scared. Or do you go, oh, nature boy. Like, what, you know? That attitude has to fucking go. The attitude that Tommy Dreamer and RVD had about that shit. Even Justin Credible to a certain degree, you know? He came off all right on that, but like he was the only one who kind of came off like, yeah, not so bad. Right? Wheeling Scott Hall out in a wheelchair. Like, Justin Credible's had some fucking demons in his past, you know, but not as bad. I mean, he came off better than anybody on that documentary. I mean, the flight attendant came off great. I mean, you just feel for that woman, that poor woman. She's just there to do her job, and she gets fucking assaulted by all these mammoth dudes. It's not like they're not gigantic and scary, too. Like, they're huge men, and they're, like, imposing their fucking brute strength upon her. It's fucking horrible. It's terrifying. Felt really bad for her. Really bad for her. And it made me really not like Ric Flair that much. I was like, fucking Flair, man. What is the matter with this guy? It's bad.
Well, Flair said he's going to respond to this, so that's going to be interesting whenever that drops.
How do you respond? What do you say? Oh, I didn't do that. Well, she says you did. Her story's pretty convincing. I don't really believe anything your carny ass says. Right?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't know what he's going to do. But apparently, like, he knew this ahead of time, like, this was going to happen.
Yeah, well, his son-in-law, Conrad, is very tight with the Dark Side of the Ring. He does the Dark Side of the Ring Confidential, so he's very tight with that whole production team and the guys. I'm sure that they gave him a heads up. I'm sure he found out through Conrad or the show themselves. Like, they might have said, hey, this is going to come out. Because if it's not true, like, he could sue. He could sue the show. He could sue like, if it's not true, he can sue. Right? If somebody says you sexually assaulted them and you didn't, and they say it on a TV show, and then that TV show airs, You could sue the show. You could sue Vice. You could sue the woman. You sue everybody. If it's not true, you sue them. If somebody said that, Johnny North sexually assaulted them and it wasn't fucking true, and they said it on a show, you could sue that show. You could sue that whole network, right? And Flair's got the money. He's got the wherewithal to do that. So sue Vice, Ric Flair. Sue Dark Side of the Ring if it's not true. If you didn't do that to that woman. I doubt that lawsuit will be fucking coming. Sue them, Ric Flair. I fucking dare you. But he won't. Right? He won't. Bad. Impact Wrestling suspending Tommy Dreamer. Like, they want to cut ties with this guy. He fucking should not have appeared on that show. Like, he really had no business being on the show. They're like, hey, Tommy, you want to do an interview for the Dark Side of the Ring, Plane Ride from Hell? He's like, yeah, sure. He goes, he gives his opinion, and it's like, oh, shit. Like, he fucked up a lot of things he had going for him. The Impact Wrestling, he was on that radio show there with Bubba Dudley, And now, maybe not. Like, Tommy Dreamer fucked up.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get a response back from him or what he's gonna do next. That's I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know what he does next, but that was a big career misstep there, Tommy, appearing on Dark Side of the Ring and shooting your mouth off. You really should not have defended Ric Flair sexually assaulting people, or any of your fellow wrestlers doing that type of shit. Yeah. And it's because of guys like you that type of shit was able to go on for as long as it did. And thankfully, Impact Wrestling doing the right thing and getting guys like you out of professional wrestling where you belong. You shouldn't be around professional wrestling if that's the way you think, to fucking poison the well, unfortunately. I like Tommy Dreamer, we've had good interactions with him over the years, but goddamn, Tommy, you fucked up. Fucked up big time. So, disappointed. Disappointed in Rob Van Dam, too. Like, I'm a big fan of RVD's. And seeing him on that documentary made me think, like, fuck, man. Come on. You couldn't do some shit? What do you mean guys were drugging girls to have their way with them? What do you mean? How often was this happening? You seem to say that it was like a regular occurrence. Who was doing this? And why did you do nothing to stop it? And if you did do something to stop it, fucking say something, man. Because it didn't seem like you did anything to stop it. Super disappointed in Rob Van Dam. Like, come on, dude. You could do the splits. You could kick a guy in the face. You know how hard it is to do the splits? Nobody does the splits as a grown man. This guy had muscles and could do splits. Telling me you couldn't kick somebody's ass? Couldn't beat up old Ric Flair? Come on, dude. Ridiculous. Disappointing.